Welcome to Topic 5, Scientific Practices and Misconducts. In this lecture, we will explore three important areas: data ownership, protection of intellectual property, and misconduct in research and publication. By the end of this topic, you should understand the ethical and legal frameworks in scientific research, and how to recognize practices that are considered misconduct.
Let's begin with data ownership. Data ownership refers to the possession and responsibility over research data. In simple words, if you own the data, you have the power to control it. This includes the right to access it, modify it, package it, benefit from it, sell it, or even delete it. You can also decide who else is allowed to do these things. Interestingly, some scholars suggest replacing the term ownership with stewardship. This emphasizes responsibility in managing data rather than just control. And importantly, data is considered a form of intellectual property, which means it is protected under law.
Why is data ownership important? Because data itself has value, and once processed into information, its value increases. Ownership ensures accountability, proper management, and control over who can use or share the data. In short, ownership protects both the data and the integrity of research. Who owns research data? Often, the academic institution does. But in some cases, ownership may belong to the individual researcher, the funder or sponsor, or even shared among collaborators. In human subject research, participants may also have rights over their personal data. And finally, data placed in repositories may be governed by repository policies. Legally, data ownership is governed by several laws. Intellectual property laws may protect original works or inventions. Contract law defines ownership through agreements and employment contracts. Data protection laws safeguard personal data and grant rights to individuals. And trade secret laws protect valuable business information from competitors. Other legal frameworks also apply. University or employment policies often define who owns the data. Data sharing agreements clarify rights and responsibilities between partners. Some data is designated as open or public, meaning anyone can use it freely. And industry-specific regulations, such as in healthcare or finance, provide additional rules on ownership and sharing. At University Putra, Malaysia, research policies are guided by the Universities and University Colleges Act 1971. This act empowers UPM to create rules and guidelines on research and innovation. Therefore, ownership and protection of research outputs at UPM are backed not only by university policy but also by national law. Malaysia also has a national intellectual property policy, and UPM has its own IP policies. These policies ensure that intellectual property generated from research is properly protected and managed. The principle is simple. Intellectual property produced by university members generally belongs to the university. How does the university protect intellectual property? By securing patents, trademarks, and industrial designs. By safeguarding trade secrets and confidentiality. And by defending its rights in court when infringements occur. As researchers, you are expected to support the university in protecting intellectual property created under its name. In summary, intellectual property rights are central to research integrity. Universities, including UPM, actively manage ownership and protection to ensure that discoveries and innovations are legally safeguarded and can be used responsibly. This slide highlights the importance of institutional frameworks for intellectual property protection. At UPM, policies are not just administrative documents. They act as legal instruments that safeguard research outcomes and define the rights and responsibilities of both the university and its researchers. Research at UPM is carried out within an institutionalized scope. This means that all projects, data, and outputs fall under the university's policies and strategies. By aligning with these policies, researchers ensure that their work is recognized, managed, and protected systematically. Here we see how intellectual property is integrated into research management. The goal is not only to produce new knowledge, but also to protect and preserve it. When discoveries are safeguarded legally, they can be further developed, transferred, or commercialized for the benefit of society. Intellectual property is more than just a legal requirement. It is also a driver of innovation and competitiveness. Protecting intellectual property means that valuable research outcomes can be transformed into useful technologies, products, or services that create real impact. Intellectual property protection at UPM includes several key measures. The university secures rights through patents, trademarks, and industrial designs. It also protects trade secrets and uses confidentiality agreements when necessary. No information related to university-owned research should be disclosed without permission. If infringements occur, the university has the authority to defend its rights in court. All intellectual property generated from research at UPM, whether patents, trade secrets, or know-how, belongs to the university. However, the university can share these rights with third parties through formal agreements. In terms of copyright, materials produced by staff or students, such as teaching resources or creative works, may also belong to the university, unless otherwise assigned. Only the university has the right to commercialize intellectual property. If commercialization is successful, UPM may share profits with the inventors, such as the teachers, students, or staff involved. However, cooperation from the researchers is essential to ensure smooth commercialization and to maximize benefits. Any violation of intellectual property rules is considered misconduct. For example, if a researcher discloses discoveries without authorization or attempts to commercialize them independently, this is a breach of policy. Such cases are treated seriously and may lead to disciplinary action. How do we protect intellectual property? First, understand what IP is. It refers to all rights resulting from intellectual activity in scientific, industrial, literary, or artistic fields. This includes inventions, creative works, designs, and even symbols or names used in commerce. IP protection gives creators exclusive rights over their work for a limited time. In summary, intellectual property is an intangible but valuable asset. It represents creations of the mind that can be legally protected. Intellectual property rights encourage innovation by rewarding creators, while also ensuring that knowledge can eventually be shared for the benefit of society.
When it comes to new ideas, not everything is protectable as intellectual property. Common knowledge and facts are not eligible for protection. Discoveries that are disclosed publicly may also be used freely without restriction. To qualify for protection, ideas must meet the requirement of novelty. This is why patents, industrial designs, and new plant varieties must demonstrate originality before they can be protected. Non-disclosure agreements, or NDAs, are an important tool in protecting intellectual property. They ensure that sensitive ideas or data are not disclosed to unauthorized parties. By signing an NDA, collaborators or partners agree to keep information confidential. This is often used before patents are filed, or when research is in progress. Intellectual property protection can come in two main forms. First, through registration, such as patents, industrial designs, trademarks, geographical indications, and new plant varieties. Second, through automatic protection without registration, like copyright and layout designs of integrated circuits. Both provide legal rights to creators, but the scope and duration of protection vary depending on the type. Now, let's move to the topic of research misconduct. Research misconduct refers to fabrication, falsification, or plagiarism in proposing, conducting, reviewing, or reporting research. It represents what is considered wrong, unethical, or unacceptable in the research process. Importantly, honest error or simple carelessness is not considered misconduct. Examples of misconduct include fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism. It also covers violations of ethical standards in research involving human or animal subjects. Other forms include ghostwriting, unqualified authorship, and suppression of data or findings. Additionally, failure to comply with local, national, or institutional regulations is also considered misconduct. Examples of misconduct include fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism. Let's clarify the difference. Fabrication is when you completely make things up. Imagine a student inventing fake lab results that never existed, like writing a story instead of reporting reality. Falsification is when the data exists, but you twist or modify it. Think of editing a photo to make yourself look taller. The original is real, but it has been distorted. Plagiarism is when you copy someone else's work and present it as your own. Imagine stealing your friend's homework and just changing the name at the top. Beyond these three, misconduct also includes violations of ethical standards in human or animal research, ghostwriting, unqualified authorship, and suppression of important data. And remember, misconduct is not just breaking rules. It damages trust, wastes resources, and misleads the scientific community. Plagiarism is the use of another person's ideas, processes, results, or words without giving proper credit. This includes reproducing tables, figures, or text from others and presenting them as one's own work. It also includes reporting someone else's findings as if the investigator had carried out the research themselves. Citation plagiarism happens when credit is incomplete or misleading. For example, a researcher may copy full sentences or even paragraphs from a paper, but only cite the source without quotation marks. This gives the impression that the words are their own. Analogy: it's like borrowing your friend's car, telling people it belongs to you, and only later admitting that someone else actually owns it. It may look minor, but it still violates honesty and originality. Self-plagiarism, sometimes called salami publication, happens when a researcher republishes the same content multiple times under different titles or in different journals. It also includes translating the same article into another language and publishing it as if it were new, without stating the original source. Analogy: it's like reheating yesterday's meal, serving it on a different plate, and calling it a fresh dish. The audience thinks it's new, but in reality, it's just recycled. Ghostwriting is when someone other than the named author writes the manuscript. The true writer may not have been involved in the research, while the listed author may not have written the work. This practice hides the real contributors and can mask sponsor influence. It undermines both transparency and accountability in publications. Unqualified authorship means giving credit to people who did not significantly contribute to the study. Sometimes senior staff insist on being listed, while in other cases junior researchers add senior names without permission to increase chances of publication. True authorship should only go to those who contributed meaningfully to the research and manuscript. To qualify as an author, a person must make a significant contribution. This includes designing or conceptualizing the study, collecting or analyzing data, interpreting results, or drafting and critically reviewing the manuscript. Supervision or providing funding alone does not justify authorship. Each author must also take responsibility for the integrity of the work. Suppression of data occurs when important results are withheld, often because they are unfavorable. This may include selective reporting or not publishing negative results. If the suppression is deliberate and intended to deceive, it is misconduct. Such practices create a distorted scientific record and can mislead future research. Misconduct carries official consequences. These may include letters of reprimand, termination of employment, stricter approval processes, or independent verification of publications. Research grants may be suspended or terminated, and researchers can be barred from applying for new ones. In severe cases, there may even be criminal sanctions. The implications of misconduct go far beyond the researcher. Fabricated or falsified results waste time, money, and resources. Unethical studies may put human and animal subjects at unnecessary risk. Misrepresented findings can lead to unsafe treatments, products, or procedures being used by society. Ultimately, misconduct damages both science and the public's trust. This slide introduces the transition to the next section of our lecture. It serves as a bridge to understanding the Malaysian Code of Responsible Conduct in research and examples of misconduct cases. The key point is that responsibility in research is not optional, it is fundamental. The Malaysian Code of Responsible Conduct in research lays out 8 principles of integrity. These principles guide all researchers in ensuring honesty, accountability, transparency, and fairness in their work. They form the foundation for ethical research practices in Malaysia. Now we move to another important area, conflicts of interest. While conflicts of interest are not always considered misconduct in the strict sense, they still affect fairness, objectivity, and trust in research. Conflicts may occur at both the individual and institutional levels, and they must be carefully managed. Research must always take legal and ethical issues into account. Credible research is free from plagiarism, and a successful project must manage conflicts of interest responsibly so that fairness and objectivity are maintained.